attending whatever we're doing, coming, attending, logging on, whatever it is these days. So Janice has asked Joey to come and speak to us. She's going to ask him a few questions, and then we're going to have a few people from our group give a little talk, but we'd love to have interaction. So if anybody has anything to add, please join in. But Janice, if you want to introduce Joey.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Jenny. So I'm super thrilled today to have Joey Havens join us. And I know Sierra sent out his bio that we probably just stole from Horn's website. But so rather than read you his bio, I'm just going to give you a little bit of my personal background and intro to Joey. So several years ago, I heard Joey speak at a conference, and he spoke about employee engagement. And I loved so much what he had to say. I started to follow his blog, and he puts out a blog. He can tell us how often he does it, but it's pretty often. And I started following his blog, and I thought, this man is amazing. He thinks of the accounting industry differently. And about a year after that, I was at an Upstream Academy conference, and I sat at a table near the front of the room, and I sat next to this man, and he turned to me at one point and he said, "I'm the next speaker. Can you help me run my slides?" And it turned out to be Joey. And I was sitting next to Joey, and I think I kind of had almost like starstruck for a minute. That was my first personal introduction to Joey. And then about 6 months later, I was privileged to be selected to be on an AICPA committee. It's the AICPA Women's Executive Initiatives Committee. The WIC is what we call it, committee. And I've been serving on that committee for 2 years with Joey, and that corresponded with the time that I took over as CEO at Squire. And so Joey is I don't think you use the term CEO, right, Joey? Is it managing executive partner? Okay, executive partner at Horn, which is a top 100 firm. And there's another gentleman on that group as well that's the CEO of another top 100 firm. And these two men have been so incredibly kind and gracious to me to mentor me through my first 2 years as taking over and managing the firm. And they've been incredibly helpful. Every time we go to a meeting, I come prepared with a list of questions to pepper them with. And they've just been great and insightful. And in a recent WIC meeting, we were talking about the effects of the pandemic on women specifically. And Joey had such a great perspective about how this is actually an opportunity for women and so many things that we can do about it. I came back and talked to our women's group leadership and said, I think we should talk about this topic. And then Joey very graciously offered to give us some of his time today. So with that, I'm just gonna, I've come up with some questions. We're kind of do this a little bit panel style. So I've got questions, but if anybody else has questions, you can queue them up in the chat, and we'll jump in and do those as well. But as Jenny said, we'd love to have you participate if it works for what you're doing. So Joey, I'm going to ask you the first question, but feel free to correct anything I've said if I've said anything wrong so far. But so as I was saying, in a recent AICPA meeting, we were actually talking about the phrase, the pandemic brings opportunities to propel women leaders. So Joey, you were really passionate about the opportunities that are coming forward during the pandemic for women in accounting specifically. Can you share with us what gets you excited about this and your thoughts on why women specifically are positioned well to benefit from the current situation?
Absolutely, I'd be glad to. And I guess it's good morning. It's afternoon here. It's 1 o'clock where I'm at. And I thank you so much for those kind comments. I don't have to tell those of you that are on the call that you've got an amazing leader, open-minded, visionary. I'm inspired by her every time we're together. The very first time I sat down beside her, you know, we didn't even know each other, and after we were talking 10 minutes, the conversation just went in a lot of different directions about, you know, where the profession's headed and how we can do more for our teams and all of that. So thank you for this opportunity, and I certainly appreciate you and and what you've shared with me, Janice.
Thank you.
So why do I think the chairs on the deck, I like to say, on the ship are just been shifted around, and I think it plays in the favor of really anybody, certainly any young professional, and absolutely in favor of women and minorities. And I'll step you through that. There's really 6 key reasons why I believe that. And I think if you'll think about them, there's an opportunity here for you to step forward and really own that. So first, there's a hard trend. And when I use the term hard trend, I'm talking about something that's going to happen whether you and I like it or not. And one of the hard trends is that there's going to be more about relationships and less about formality. If you've noticed, you've brought each other into your homes. You've seen dogs and pets and kids, and as we become more virtual. So relationships is trumping hierarchy and formality. And so women have a natural strength at building relationships. And in fact, I can tell you that I've even noticed in our firm, my interactions is almost 2 to 1 with women now because they're grasping those relationships and owning that. It's a real strength. And because we're not going to go back to that hierarchy, that it's going to be more informal is a great opportunity for you to step forward with your strengths. The second hard trend is that leaders are going to be more accessible. I bet you've seen your leaders more since you had to go virtual than you did before. I know our leadership is in front of our team all the time now. And they're interactive and taking direct questions. And so your access to leadership and then stepping up to be one of those leaders, just like y'all are doing today, to have direct access is a huge benefit. I mean, don't let that go because you're probably touching and have relationships with leaders you didn't have before. Number 3, this one's really big. Networking has changed forever. We're on a digital platform now. There's digital happy hour. There's all kinds of digital book clubs, all kinds of things going on. And so, I mean, let's own it. Women, there was a lot of stereotype, legacy kind of barriers when it came to networking. It's not always easy to get in on the conversation, or the conversation happens out on a golf course that you're not on, or maybe you are on. Anyway, networking now is flatter, and it's easier to have that virtual experience, which creates a very strong relationship. And so networking now for everybody on this call is easier to do. Number 4 is huge. Guilt vampire. I've always said when we started our Fearless Unrivaled Flexibility, the thing we had to kill was the guilt vampire, that the woman was getting a special deal because she wanted different hours, or she had children responsibilities, or whatever the reason was. It was always the guilt vampire. Sometimes people putting the guilt on you, but most of the time we were creating that guilt. And so everybody's got flexibility now, and we're not going to go back to just a straight 8 to 5. Now is the time to grab, I want to work in a way that allows me to take care of my personal life and my career, meet those client needs, but it's going to be more integrated around, and everybody understands it better. People have seen the challenge of homeschooling and getting work done at the same time. People that had forgotten what that was like. And so that whole guilt vampire is out of the way. The pandemic has put more women in the spotlight. I would just encourage you to own that. Why? Because I think you're great at organizations, facilitation. So I see our women leaders, they're like leading a lot of the meetings that they might not have led previously, because they're better at organizing, better at facilitating. What you want to do is use your strengths and things like that. And then the last thing is that the table is flat. And what I mean by that is that seniority's out the window. And Make sure today, Janice, that we keep about 3 minutes at the very end. I want to tell a story about Lacey Lyons that will bring all of this home. A story about a young lady that's just done amazing in our firm. And I think it's a great way for us to close today. But the table, what we have is all new technology. We have all new ways to work, all new flexibility. We have all new regulations. We have new recovery money. We have businesses that are on one of two ends. They are doing fantastic and they need a new business model and a new plan, or they're doing terrible and they don't know if they're going to make it or not, and they need help. And all of this consulting and all of these opportunities is a huge learning curve. So it's about out-learning everybody else. And that's just a huge opportunity if you're willing to own it. So that's why I think the pandemic has shortened the mountains a little bit and given us some opportunity to leap off and really have women leaders step up.
Wow, thanks, Joey. Your final point there about the table being flattened, I think is a perfect lead-in to kind of my next question. One of your recent blog posts that I was enjoying the other day, you wrote about the dangers of hanging on to legacy thinking. My favorite quote from that post, you said, "Our craving for the status quo of 2 months ago or last year can cause us to cling to legacy thinking. It's limiting our abilities to see opportunities that also come with the new normal." And so my specific question is, what recommendations do you have for newer professionals who might think that, you know, I'm not a leader yet, I'm new, but what recommendations do you have for them to jump in and influence that legacy thinking and just push past the fact that they're new?
I think one, make sure you listen to Lacey's story when I tell it at the end, because I'm going to give you the three-legged stool, which will make a difference for you. Be bold, communicate your ideas. Don't be scared of speaking up and contributing to the conversation. You know, we had a young associate that had only been with us about 4 months, and we were faced with a new change in audit regulations. It's going to cause a lot of hours on our team and a lot of hours on the client's team. This person stepped up and said, you know, I believe there's another way to do this with pivot tables and some other things. And it turned out they were right. And we literally saved hundreds of hours, both for us and the client, all because they were willing to speak up and talk about innovation and a new idea. And I think overall for our profession, my message is this: stop thinking about being more efficient and saving, cost savings. The table's been flipped. It's about what's the most effective thing for us to be doing right now. Not are we doing things right, are we doing the right things? And so keep that in front of you. I think that's really important.
I really like that. And that kind of fits the next question too. So, you know, on this committee with the AICPA, I think Joey has created a role for himself where he reminds us, are we doing the right things? And so he asks the question a lot, what are we doing right now to be distinctful and impactful? And specifically, maybe distinctful and impactful in the new normal. So what are your thoughts on some of those right things that we should be doing right now?
All right, I'm going to start at the personal level. I think showing optimism, looking for opportunities, and being able to show the ability and demonstrating the ability to focus on those is from the personal level. But just think about the pandemic, and I talked about this earlier. This is a hard trend. There's going to be more and more new regulations. And it's going to be in every facet of business. So if you want to be impactful, you want to be on that front, learning about those regulations. All types of money coming into your state or your states. They're going to affect hospitals, small business, your government agencies, all of this recovery money, the PPP loan program. There's all kinds of money that is going to make a difference, and there's an ability to learn that and be impactful with that. The financial crisis, depending on how you're looking at it, they're talking about as much as 25% of small businesses might not make it. I'm thinking that's going to affect your client base. It's going to affect our client base. So think about what the swing is. It's from being focused on the income statement to being focused on the balance sheet for so many organizations. And why do I say that? It's because now people are needing to know, where can we get capital? How can what is our cash flow? What are the cash flow projections around that? And what's our burn rate? That's probably two words that you're going to be thinking and hearing from your clients over and over again. What's our burn rate so that we can make it through this recovery period and be a successful business? Those are just two ideas that come up immediately where it's easy to have an impact right now.
Thank you, Joey. I totally agree. I mean, our client base is small businesses, and I keep thinking, what can we be doing now to help them prepare? And that fits right along with that. So one of the topics that we hear a lot about in the different female leadership trainings we do, we go to Aicpa Women Leads conferences, all of those, but we hear over and over about how women hold back because they're afraid of making mistakes, and they wait until they have the perfect answer. You kind of alluded to this earlier, but I've been feeling, right now might be a time where it's more acceptable to make a mistake. For example, many of us are more forgiving of a child screaming in the background. Like you were saying, we've invited people into our home. I know one of our leaders here on this call, hopefully she's okay with me sharing this, she was doing a meeting with some of the people, a leadership meeting, and her daughter walked in and was mad at her, and she actually turned and said to everybody on the call, she's like, "My mom's so bossy, you don't want to work with her." And that's the type of thing that we laughed about. But maybe 4 months ago, we would have all been like, "Oh my gosh, that's so hard," right? And or maybe telling somebody that you can't get to that project until tonight because you have to help your kids finish their school assignment that day, but you'll still get it done tonight. So those are types of things we may have seen as maybe a type of a mistake in the past. But what advice do you have for us about embracing our mistakes and imperfections during this time to help it be part of our future new normal?
Well, I think you described it perfectly. Which you went back to the first hard trend that I talked about. It's relationships over formality. It's relationships over hierarchy. And so we all know, we've seen each other as imperfect humans, right? We don't have our mask on every day. We've seen the family scene. We've made mistakes on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever you're utilizing. So perfection, which is our worst enemy, when I think about perfection, it's really fear masquerading as excellence. Perfection is never excellence. And sometimes we get in our minds that we have to be perfect, that we can't make a mistake. So this has really lowered the blinds, okay? And so why would we pull the blinds back up? Why would we put them, it actually raised the blinds. Why would we put them back down is what I'm really trying to say. Is so step through that and realize we're all imperfect humans, and go for it.
I love that. So another blog post that I was reading, I think this is your most recent one, but you were talking about using the time to clean up items in the profession, and you gave the example of making the profession more digital. But are there any other items we haven't talked about yet today that you would recommend we look at cleaning up in our firms and our own careers?
And thank you for following the blog, and I really appreciate that. The blog comes out every Wednesday morning.
Okay.
52 weeks a year, and has for 6 or 7 years now. So I'm going to go with the big one. You may regret this one. So the first one is one of my pet peeves is the time clock. And I realize that the time clock, the chargeable hours, driving a lot of your revenues right now. But if you think about what's just happened with this digital transformation, everything being more virtual, people working differently at different times, you know, managing time is not going to get us where we need to be. It's about results and outcomes and the worth of what we're doing. So I think the profession is going to really accelerate our move away from the time clock. So that's one of the things that's got to be cleaned up. We've been working on that for several years at Horn, and so we've got a lot of our team off of the time clock. But one of the things that's really given us a lot of problems is project management, because you have to be good at project management when you're off the time clock. And so we are really working on a project management software that really helps us get rid of a lot of the manual processes that we continue to have. So that's the two that come to mind that really needs cleaning up for the profession.
Those are great. Is there anyone that has any questions for Joey? I think it was another one of your blog posts that you said one of your partners said, "Am I on mute?" when it got totally silent. But yeah. Well, if we don't have any questions, do you want to tell us the story about Lacey?
Oh, yes. So Lacey's just a really unique story. She's been with our firm 12 years, and she joined our team as an administrative assistant in Austin, Texas. And she was working with our government services group. She doesn't have an accounting degree. And by the way, our firm does a lot of consulting work. So we have, you know, a wide variety of degrees and expertise and professionals. So not unusual for somebody to be able to do that. But she quickly started getting promotions as she kept seeking that out. Lacey is now today, this year, she received a promotion into our Future Owners Program, which means she's 1 to 3 years from partnership. And she's leading a very large team in Austin, Texas today, of 50 plus team members. So started as an administrative assistant working directly for a partner in government services. So I have a live Java with Joey that I do where we let people ask questions at the firm, and I asked her to be a guest on that show, and she shared her story with our entire firm, and she talked about her three-legged stool and how she accomplished moving from an administrative assistant to a future owner. And the first was culture. That was the first leg, and she paid tribute to our culture, which we call the WISE firm, is what we call our culture. But it's built on a strong sense of belonging. And I will tell you, you can have all the women's initiatives you want. You can have all the minority initiatives you want. You can have blonde hair, blue eye. You can have whatever initiative you want. If people don't have a strong sense of belonging, if you're invited to the dance and nobody dances with you, it doesn't work. And so that's why we focus on a strong sense of belonging and creating an equitable playing field for everybody. And so because she felt that strong sense of belonging, she did some of the things that you asked me about today. She took some risks. She challenged things. She felt like she had the trust. She felt like she could make some mistakes. The second part of her stool was fierce ownership. We started calling Lacey the snake killer. Now, I don't know if y'all have a lot of snakes where you live, but we have a lot of snakes in the South. And all that means is if you had a problem, go sit down with Lacey and she would figure out a way to get rid of that problem. She could kill that snake. And so she took fierce ownership, even in things outside of what might have been her role or responsibility, which was the third leg of her stool. And it's the one I want you to really focus on. And that's no glass ceilings. No glass ceilings. And her words were, never let a role or a title define what you can accomplish. And she never did. She was always doing something beyond her title. Even in the first year as administrative assistant, my lights just went out. Let me get them back on. Even in her first year as administrative assistant, she was doing things that an associate might be asked to do because she saw the opportunity and she said, hey, this is the attitude. I think I can do that. I can do that. And she had that can-do attitude. So that's her three-legged stool. I think the glass ceiling is really, really key. That don't let your role define you. Don't let it decide what you can accomplish. And I think Lacey's story is just exactly what we want going on in all our firms today and in our profession.
I love that. Maybe we'll have to have Lacey on one of our meetings here.
She would be fantastic.
Yeah, and many of the women in our group have heard me say kind of something similar, which is don't ever say, if someone asks you if you can do something, don't ever say no. Tell them yes and go figure out how to do it. So
start with yes anyway.
Right? Yeah. And obviously that's within the context of what they're asking, but yeah, I really like that can-do attitude she has. So well, Joey, I really appreciate your time. I know you're very busy running your firm, and especially with everything going on now. So we appreciate having you join us immensely. So thank you so much.
Well, thank y'all so much. I hope you have a great, great day, and I really do appreciate the opportunity. It was definitely a privilege.
Perfect. Thank you for
Joey,
joining.
Joey, just a personal hello from Tim Larson. Good to hear your voice.
Great to hear from you. I didn't even know you were on the call.
Just eavesdropping.
Fantastic. Y'all have a great day. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Joey. All right, Jenny.
Okay. So the reason we decided to do this meeting is there's just been the pandemic. I mean, it's caused a lot of change and everything. And for a lot of people, it feels negative. I mean, it feels very negative to me, and I'm sure it does for everyone else. So we just kind of wanted to focus on the positives and what we can gain from this and the accomplishments that we can make. So for the next part of our meeting, I've asked Courtney, Samantha, and Megan to just give an example of something that they've noticed during this pandemic or something that has happened to them that they feel will be, that will help them later on in their career. So we're gonna start with Courtney and then Samantha and then Megan. And then if we have time at the end, we'd love to hear comments from anybody else, just talking about some of the positives that have come from all this. So Courtney?
Yeah. So in prep for this, I read up a few blogs about that talked about some of the positives for women specifically. And one of the blogs that I read talked about how many employers have in the past resisted moving to flexible work schedules and environments. A lot of the reasoning would be because they felt doubtful that employees would be productive at home. But I think that the coronavirus pandemic has shown that it is vital to embrace the remote working environment. Actually, my husband's work, they had a team meeting and they talked about how being at home actually improved their communication between departments. Because it was easier for them to be on calls and not have to walk across the office and things like that. So that was very interesting to me. But also, I think that with the flexible work environments, it actually is going to be an asset to businesses that have moved to remote working. Part of some might be for a future crisis, kind of similar to what we're going through right now. If there was anything to happen, then everyone's prepared and efficiencies are already established, and so that is an asset to businesses. But also for employee situations where maybe they might be sick or suffer an injury. I know one of my husband's coworkers, I think it was 2 years ago, he was paragliding and got in an accident and he couldn't move from the hips down, but because he had some remote working flexibility, he was still able to provide for his family, which was awesome. Also with sicknesses, maybe if kids are sick and you're the primary caregiver, you can still work from home and still just be there and be there for your work, but also for the kids that you're taking care of. Another thing that I thought of just while I was here at home is sometimes you might have a service done in your home, and it helps to be able to be remote and not miss out on maybe a meeting or something, and I can still call in if I had to be home for maybe my refrigerator to be fixed and all of those things. So my hope is also that with the pandemic and being more remote, that where women have shown that they are primarily the care providers for their kids, or they require more flexible work schedules, that it will actually drive more women to come into the work environment and see that opportunities are still available to them. And especially with Squire and accounting, where we are moving to remote, I think that's an awesome way to show women that they can still succeed and become leaders and do well in their careers, even if they have kids at home or need to have a flexible work environment. The other thing that I have felt during this time, this is specifically to me, is my husband, he works with China, and so I typically like to work in the mornings and get a lot of my things done, and then I'm home by like early 5 o'clock, but with China's time change, he works like 9, 10 o'clock till 6, 7, 8 into the evenings. And so a lot of times he'd come home and I wouldn't see him. And so Monday through Friday, we wouldn't really see each other just because our time was different. But working from home, it's actually been really nice to be able to take a second and have dinner together and maybe have more of a work-life balance that's more sustainable. Those are all my comments about it, but I'm excited what the remote working will do for Squire.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Samantha, do you want to join in now?
Yeah. So as I was thinking about and reflecting about, the positive things that I've experienced or noticed from this pandemic, it goes back to a lot of what Courtney was saying, as well as Joey touched on it. But I think the biggest thing for me that I've appreciated is this mindset shift, or this breaking down those walls of feeling, I guess, almost too professional. But it really feels like we've, we're all experiencing a vulnerable time. And we brought each other into our homes, as we've said, through the video conferences and working from home. And it really just feels like I've felt more connected to everyone just from feeling like we're all going through this together. We're not isolated. I've actually been working from home remotely full time since January because I'm located in Arizona. And so it was, it's difficult when I'm one of the few working from home and everyone's in the office. I did sometimes feel like I was missing out or not getting to interact with others. But now it seems like I've felt, since everyone's transitioned to working from home, more connected than I did previously, just because we're all in that same boat. And I think there's that sense of understanding of we're all experiencing a big change. We're all trying to adjust and adapt. And that's requiring a lot of flexibility and understanding from all of those around us. And that's just been a huge burden, I think, off of me. And I would imagine others, as it seems like there's been this stigma of working from home, of maybe it's not the most effective or efficient option. And while that may be true in the sense of I can't necessarily sit at my desk from 8 to 5 and crank out 9 hours of work, or 8 hours of work, I do feel like because it's harder to have those big chunks of time sitting straight working, that if I break it up into smaller chunks working, those smaller chunks, those 2 to 3 to 4 hour blocks that I'm working are way more efficient than I have when I am at the office for an 8 or 9 hour period. And it's nice to have that time where I can knock out a block of time in the morning and then take a break and go, have breakfast and spend time with my son, and then come back to work later in the afternoon for a couple of hours, and then go back again to work for a couple hours in the evenings after my son goes to sleep. And I just feel like there's not that expectation of needing to be available all the time, especially during work hours with this shift in the pandemic. I've just gotten a great sense of understanding and I guess the feeling of we're all in it together. And so if I don't respond to a chat or an email right away or a call right away, I've experienced it from the other side. People also are answering right away. And it's just like, we're all in this together. And maybe they're helping their kids with school. Maybe, they needed to take a break. And it's just been nice to have that break of, okay, we're real humans. We're not just working. This isn't the only thing we have in our lives. We have other priorities and other responsibilities. And so, really, I think that's just been the biggest positive for me, is having other people see me and me being able to see other people as more than just interacting through business, but hey, they have lives too. They have kids, they have spouses, they have friends, they have, home responsibilities or whatever it may be that also take priority. And so I've just felt that's brought us closer together as a community, more in a sense of like a family rather than just working partners. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Megan?
Yes. So I've had several thoughts and kind of a roller coaster experience being home. I'm someone I've tried to exercise as much flexibility as I've needed over the years, so that I can be home with my kids when they need me to help in the classroom or do things like that. And so it's been kind of this interesting dynamic that to be home but not have a full schedule of things to do at home. Like, the reason why I used to be home was because I had somewhere to be. And so being home and not having to be as busy has in some ways been challenging, but in other ways been very rewarding. One thing that I've been able to take more control on is my health. I mean, I think that's a huge opportunity that a lot of people have taken advantage of during this time, is since you're not so influenced by all these people around you trying to demand your time face to face, and whether you're eating out all the time or whatever you're doing, I've been able to take more control over what I'm putting into my body, as well as spending time doing exercise and taking walks, and just kind of, not just physical health, but it's been mentally and emotionally health healthy to do those things, because I'm often with my family doing them. And so I'm leveraging time in a way that's that is rewarding in multiple ways. And so that's been a really great thing to be able to start taking control. Now, it also takes a lot of discipline, and not being so busy, it makes it hard to be disciplined because I'm not so strict on myself too. And so it comes with its challenges, but it's been that control that I've had it's been interesting kind of to watch my good days and my bad days on those things. Another interesting paradigm, like just totally shifting to the community involvement here. I'm on the board for the Utah Valley Chamber Women in Business Network, and we had monthly meetings, and we'd have great speakers come, and we were getting 40-ish women every month to these meetings. And so with COVID, we've been like, well, I guess we're not meeting, and kind of took a back seat. And just kind of said, well, it'll clear up eventually and we'll get back to normal. And then we decided after a little while that maybe for our May meeting, we'll see if we can get our speaker to just talk to us remotely. And that meeting is happening tomorrow, and we've only been pushing the word out for since I think Thursday or Friday of last week. And we have 150 people registered for this event, compared to the 40 we've had coming to events. And so it's been really interesting to see that people are willing to interact electronically very willingly, and willing to go. I mean, maybe it's more inside their comfort zone because they don't have to be so face to face. But it's just an interesting dynamic that now we're going to make sure that we're doing like quarterly online meetings, because we want to be reaching as many women as we can in our mission. And so it's something just one time, we haven't even had a successful event. Maybe it'll be a big flop tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. But the response we've received from the community has been just outpouring, and that's been really cool to witness. I actually am going to my first client meeting today since COVID, and I'm excited about it, but I'm kind of it's interesting that I probably spent before this, I probably spent more than 50% of my time on site at clients. And that has totally been had to totally go remote. And so it's going to be interesting to go back on site with clients and see if I can get a better balance there, because I've enjoyed being remote with them. I also miss that interaction, but it's an opportunity to see what we like and what's the best for us versus reacting to all the things around us. Yes, there's a lot of things we can't control, we have to react to right now, but we actually do have more control than we ever have had before, because of a lot of things that Courtney and Samantha were talking about. We get to have that control of how we handle the different scenarios coming at us, and we get to have time to react instead of feeling like as soon as that piece of information shows up, or as soon as that ask happens, that we have to immediately jump, because as Samantha pointed out, everyone's a little bit more relaxed in response time, and so you don't feel like you have to jump the instant you get an email, and it allows us to have that time to think, okay, how should I best approach this, instead of just jumping into something because that was the first thing that came to mind, so we just do it. And so I think we're actually able to provide better work, better communication, and overall I think we're more efficient when we're the way we have the dynamic right now. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts, that I feel like we've had opportunities and successes with COVID. So thanks.
Thank you all so much. So as I thought about this, a couple of things came to mind for me. I think I'm a girl that doesn't really like change. I don't always embrace change. It seems kind of scary to me. And I think a lot of us in the profession are like that. But this has forced us to change. We haven't really had a choice. We've had to adapt to the way we work and interface with clients and all of these things. And so for me, it's kind of made me realize that while change can be scary, it can also be really good. And looking back at my life, some of the hardest times in my life are the times when I gained the most and when I had to make those big changes. And it was scary at the time, but those were that's when I had the best success. So I think this has just kind of reminded me that although change and being flexible in our thinking is scary, it's also really exciting and rewarding. And another thing that came to my mind is just, I feel like this has given me the opportunity to create more of a balanced life. Like a lot of you, your families have been home. So my husband and I, we kind of have opposite schedules too. He goes to work a little later and then comes home quite a bit later than I do. So we don't have a lot of time to see each other than on the weekends. But he wasn't able to work for about 8 weeks. And so even though I was working, he was able to just come down there and just sit with me. And even though we weren't really doing anything, we were able to connect. And I just felt like I had a more balanced life. And I also feel like it gives me the opportunity to kind of like choose my schedule when I'm going to work. And so that also creates balance. I just think a lot of those have just been the biggest benefits for me. But we'd love to hear comments from the group. Does anybody else have something they'd like to share? Anyone?
Well, this is Lori Pack. I have to admit, I didn't love this at first. It was actually really, really hard for me. And I found it incredibly hard to concentrate at home because I felt like I need to wash the laundry. I need to do the dishes. I need to go water my plants. I got it. Do you know what I mean? Like I just felt like there was too much around me to, give my full attention to work. So I actually really hated it at first. And I begged to go back to the office. So they let me go back to the office. And then I was there for 2 days, loved it. And then I came down with a tiny fever. And the office door says no one over 100 degrees is allowed in. And I have a temperature of 101. So it's like, okay, fine. And so I guess what I've learned from this is that I appreciate the fact that I can still work at home. I don't feel sick. I have no other symptoms. But I guess it's just made me appreciate, even though I would rather be at work, I'd rather be around, my coworkers. I'm grateful for the opportunity to work at home. And I think we're very fortunate that we have that. And then the other thing that I've really appreciated is because we've been having these little mini, 4-person weekly, what are we calling them? I don't know what we're calling them. When we have them with the Salt Lake office, we call them happy hour. But I've appreciated those because I feel like
huddles, maybe.
Yeah. Mini audit huddles. I feel like we're actually getting to know each other better than when we were all in the office. Because it's, this more concentrated, okay, we're going to spend a half hour and get to know each other or play a game. And I think that's actually been really good to get to know our coworkers better. And the other thing that I've noticed from this is I think it's made our clients a lot more willing to, for the most part, give us the information we need in a timely manner because they know that we can't come there to get it, right? And so I think it's been good at, training our clients to be, a lot more, I don't know. I just think it's been really good for for our relationships with our clients, in that they're getting us information in a more timely manner because they're feeling the same things that we are, and they know that this is hard on everybody. So I think they've just been a lot more cooperative in general.
Like Lori said, I think in a lot of ways this has created efficiencies with our clients, because I think a lot of times clients feel like, oh, I need to go into the office to sign my tax return, or I need to personally drop this document off. But really, we can send them a signature page and they can send it back. It saves their time, it saves our time. So I think it has created a lot of efficiencies with our clients. Does anybody else have things to share? Anyone?
I'll say something. Joe Hillstead invited some of us to attend this BDO Alliance, and I just feel like I have listened to only 2 hours, but an hour a day, some of the most top-notch national speakers I could ever hope to hear from. So maybe it will give us more access to better training, is my thought.
Yeah, I think that's true. And kind of like Megan said, the meeting that she set up, because it's more accessible, maybe more people are able to attend. And I think that's a great benefit. Does anyone else have anything? Janice?
Well, I was just going to say, I really hope that all of us can stop, whether we have looked at it as positive yet or not, but stop and look at it and say, what can it be and how can I embrace it right now? Because I think the story that Joey ended with, that Lacey, she owned it. Somebody didn't walk in and mentor her into creating her own three-legged stool. That was her thing. And everybody has equal opportunities to own the opportunities right now. And so I think it's all about stopping and taking the time to have a proactive plan and figure out what parts of this work really well for you and what parts you want to hold on to and what parts you want to share with others and, what parts you want to leave behind. I think that's another thing too with that holding on to legacy thinking, but what is going to make your career the best? And if we have, I think there's been 37 people on this call. If all 37 of us decide what's going to make our individual careers the best, that's what's going to make Squire the best. And it trickles up. So I love that.
I completely agree. And I just think in life, positive people are happier people. And if we're happier, then we're more efficient. We're able to do a better job. And so if we're able to see the positive in such a crappy situation, I mean, I don't think any of us could say, oh my gosh, this is the best situation ever. I mean, there are a lot of things that have been negative about it. And sometimes it's a lot easier to see those. But if we kind of just look for the positive, it will help us grow and we'll just be happier and more efficient, I think. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
This is Jill. I was just going to say one thing I've noticed. I just feel like we start in such a better place in our interactions with people because, people always say you never know, be kind to people because you never know what hard thing they're going through. But I feel like right now when we interact with people, we start with the assumption that everybody's going through something hard. So I just feel like even at the store or the drive-through, the few times you do interact with people or with coworkers, you kind of start from a place of understanding or warmth more so than before. And I kind of love that because I think culturally we're always in such a rush and don't sometimes acknowledge, other people when we don't have to at the store or whatever. So anyway, I think that's been really nice.
This is Tim Larson. I was talking to Janice earlier this morning, and one of the real benefits that has come out of this is being forced to learn how to interact with each other via social or technological means. we would never have been able to gain the proficiency and the skills to be on a meeting like we're on right now without having been forced to. We would have been frustrated and given up. And so we've really benefited by being forced to do things differently. And I think it's going to change the way we do things permanently going forward.
I completely agree, and I think it'll be a positive change. All right, well, if there's nobody else that has anything to add, we'll just wrap it up. And thank you all for your participation. The meetings are always better when we have more participation, so I appreciate everyone. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.